Hello and welcome to the Emerging Consciousness Global Online Festival, a kaleidoscope of voices and perspectives on awakening. Here we are gathering with leading transformative coaches, visionary artists, cultural creatives, an eclectic mix of wisdom keepers blended with colorful new voices in order to create a place where curious people can come for fearless and experiential learning. So thank you for being a part of this transpersonal movement to liberate minds and supercharge consciousness, activate the farthest reaches of human potential so that we can make a more peaceful and evolved world. My name is Tami Mensh. I'm a transformative life and spiritual business coach. I am the founder of Kaleidoscope Lounge and Coaching and creator and host of this event. And I serve people on a journey to more authenticity, wisdom, and joy. And those brave souls that sense that change is imminent and long to connect with what makes them feel more fully alive. And that's what this event is all about. And it would not be complete without a delve into a discussion about psychedelics and in the emerging consciousness, how important this is as an emerging field to our spiritual awakening, our healing, and our personal development and relationship to the natural world. And so I am really thrilled today to have here with us for a great conversation with Kyle Buller and Joe Moore. Last year, I took their Navigating Psychedelics for Therapists and Clinicians class with them. And these are two of the most knowledgeable guys in the field I know, two of the coolest guys I know in the field. And I really learned a lot from them and got a lot out of the course. So I'm really happy to have them both here. Hi, guys.
Hello. Hey, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. And Joe and Kyle founded Psychedelics Today in 2006. And so they
2016.
all right. Thank you. Okay. 2016. And they discuss academic and scientific research in the field and how it relates to human potential. And they communicate through blogs, a twice weekly podcast, online courses, like I mentioned, that I took. And they have a deep background in psychedelics and holotropic breath work and work with the folks at Dream Shadow in Vermont. So they're bringing a lot of wisdom here with us today. So it's good stuff. So today we're going to talk about transpersonal psychology and psychedelics. And so my background's in transpersonal psychology. Kyle's is in transpersonal psychology. And a lot of times people will say, what's transpersonal psychology? And so let's start with, what is transpersonal psychology? How would you explain that, Kyle?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure we could have a nice conversation since we both have that background. Yeah, whenever I get that question, I always kind of come back to the etymology of the word. Trans meaning beyond, and then the personal, obviously, personal. So beyond the personal. And so when I think about my studies in transpersonal psychology, it's really trying to incorporate some of these spiritual and mystical experiences and validate them. In kind of like Western psychology, maybe they're on the fringes and kind of outside the scope of normalcy. I guess we'll put that in air quotes, what is normal? But yeah, really looking at these different states of consciousness and trying to validate that. And the term was first coined by William James, and then again by Stan Grof, suggested the term as a field for the field of psychology later on.
Yeah, I'm hearing it more and more, I think, the term. And for me, yeah, it's the non-ordinary, states of consciousness, and those parts of ourselves that really we can't be defined or proven, to exist. And that's where I really feel a lot of the most exciting things are happening and opportunities for us for growth. So I think it's really an important part of what's happening in emerging consciousness. And I think more and more people are going to get turned on to that. And why would you say that, in your opinion, it's that transpersonal psychology is important to the field of psychedelics?
Mm. Well, I think it just helps when we look at the history of transpersonal psychology. It kind of has that deep history with Stanislav Grof, and he contributed a lot to the field of psychedelics. I mean, he was a pioneer in psychedelic research. So for those that don't know who Dr. Stanislav Grof is, he's a Czechoslovakian American psychiatrist who ended up doing a lot of really great research in Czechoslovakia when he was there in the realm of psychedelics, and then in the United States before the war on drugs kind of happened, and a lot of that research shut down. And also one of the co-creators, along with his wife Christina, of holotropic breathwork. So really trying to go back to the roots where this field emerged from, out of the humanistic movement. The humanistic movement was happening, and a group of people got together to really talk about some of these other mystical type of experiences, and we needed a new field of psychology to help explore it. So as a psychedelic quote unquote renaissance is happening. I know some people don't like that term of what's going on. The emerging field of psychedelic science, really to kind of come back and take in a lot of these theories and ideas that came before us to help us create a map, a framework to work with these states. And the benefit that I really found from my studies with transpersonal psychology was in the breathwork world, also studying shamanic practices, dream work, and really these different techniques and frameworks to work with these experiences. Because in Western psychology, we don't have too much of a framework to work with the mystical. So I think transpersonal psychology really kind of provides that framework to start to work with these experiences. And as more and more people start to have it, and psychedelics are kind of out of the bag at this point, and people know about it, and people are self-exploring, a framework is helpful. We need a map. The map isn't always the territory, but it's nice to have that map so you don't get lost. I don't know, Jake, do you want to add anything to why it's important?
Philosophically, it's really important. If psychiatry appears dominated by this biomedical model of illness and doesn't really respect psyche in the way we want psychology to respect psyche. Psyche is a really big thing, quite vast, quite powerful. And it's not just about this human biological thing. It's beyond that. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind when we're developing these sciences. Psychology is still really young. William James wasn't that long ago. Freud wasn't that long ago. We've come a long way, sure. But what does it mean that psychology is just about behavioral health? It's like that's, minimizing what psyche is. And I think it's a lot more inspiring to think of psyche as bigger. It's a lot more empowering. And it brings magic back to life, which, life's quite hard to live without magic right now. And this is one angle to bring it in by recognizing and perhaps having these extraordinary experiences yourself through all sorts of means.
Yeah, I love that you said that, bring the magic, back in. That sounds really, really good to me. So what, some people listening and watching, might have had, psychedelic experiences, some haven't. And what would you say would be like, so if there is this emerging way, what would be a good or safe way? I know you guys do a lot of harm reduction, to begin a relationship like that with the medicine.
Right. So first, you want to learn as much as you can. You might feel really impatient and want to just jump in with the person you met at your yoga studio who runs ayahuasca workshops. We'd suggest reading maybe 5 books that are considered classics. You know, James Fadiman's Psychedelic Explorer's Guide would be a great place to start. I spent 6 or 7 years doing holotropic breath work before I even tried a psychedelic compound. And that to me is one of the few things that I can in good conscience suggest to most people. Start with breath work. You don't need to go spend $1,000 to go do this thing. If you're just curious, you're not trying to treat an acute illness, right? If you're just trying to like have a relationship with these things, consider it a relationship with psyche or soul. Much larger concept than relationship to plant spirit or something along those lines. Because it's about, you know, all this stuff is in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is. And, you know, kind of a dumb quote, but it's helpful to think of it that way. Like, this is all, if we want to go that mystical route, you know, which is what a lot of folks want to do when they come here. You know, it's all you just don't know how big you are yet and how connected you are yet. Yeah, Kyle, anything you want to add there?
I always start with like the intention, like what is really kind of drawing you to the substance? You know, are you reading about it and it just sounds exciting, or people talking about it and you feel like, hey, I need to have an experience? And I think it is important to really approach it with a lot of intention and respect, and to know that, you know, these substances always aren't for everybody, right? And to really kind of, you know, you develop your own kind of self-awareness around that, and ask those questions. Why do you want to engage in this work? And does it feel right to you? Are there other modalities that might be helpful, as Joe suggested, like, you know, starting with something like holotropic or transpersonal breath work, to kind of take your first step into an experience with a non-ordinary state or holotropic state of consciousness. So yeah, intention, really kind of just, yeah, reflecting on why you want to engage in this work.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit and come back to the holotropic transpersonal breath work. You know, there's so many different, you know, substances out there, and you know, and let's say your intention is, you know, to learn more about yourself, you know, self-discovery, to grow, to, you know, step in, elevate your consciousness, like we were saying. How does one know what the right type of, you know, psychedelic or medicine is for them, for their needs? How do you fit those together?
It's a great question.
Given they're illegal, it's largely illegal.
Yes.
It's well, they aren't illegal. It's illegal to possess them or consume them in a lot of different cases. And you know, start with what's available and safe. You know, like something you buy on the black market isn't necessarily safe. Ketamine is hugely safe, and it's where a lot of people are entering into the space because they can go to a clinic, you know, for anxiety, depression, and a few other indications, and try that in a safe, supervised environment. Like, a lot of people don't know what it's like to be inside, right? You're so like consumed shopping and, you know, media exposure and whatnot, you don't even know what it's like inside your mind. You know, so gentler things might be better. You know, like there's some things that are kind of expert terrain out there that I don't think are really safe. Things like 5-MeO DMT, I would say, like, do a number of years of inner work before you touch something really complicated like that. Kyle, what do you think about like selecting for your first few journeys?
Yeah, it's hard to really suggest medicines since they are illegal, but, you know, really kind of do your research, see what some of the literature is saying. And I think we're at this beginning stage right now with the research that, you know, there's certain medicines that are being researched for specific disorders. And, you know, we're at the beginning of this. And even though some of it sounds like, oh, this is better for this is better for that, I think it's probably going to come down to, yeah, there's going to be a lot of different factors here. Like, you know, for example, MDMA is being researched for PTSD. And it does seem like that's a really great medicine for PTSD because the way it acts on the brain, decreases blood flow to the amygdala, and that left part of the amygdala, that's like the fear processing center. So it might be a little bit more gentler to process, some of these deep traumas without going into, say, this full-blown transpersonal tryptamine space from something like DMT, ayahuasca, psilocybin, and it might have a gentler effect. So I really just highly encourage people to do the research, read books, read research articles, and just be informed. It is really hard to suggest like this is what to start with.
I'd say like our classes are a great jumping off point. I hate to get all self-promotional, but there's not really another set of resources other than reading a bunch of books. That is a great way to get started. 30 something hours of material in the clinician's course, 42 really, and what a better foundation.
Yeah, it was super helpful to me. And I appreciate you bringing up the part about, intention and inner work, and, that this isn't like something you do and then, you're like, okay, I get it now. This is a whole process with integration and with about, a lot of reflection and really deep work. And so I really love what you're doing with the breath work, because that is such a great way to get inside, like you said, and see how big, you really are, and what's going on in there. So I'd love it if you could just maybe describe what that's like, or that process a little bit, Joe.
Well, it can be really different from your day-to-day consciousness, stumbling out of bed and eventually becoming more and more aware of your surroundings, and shopping and going to work and accounting. These are really different things. So you can experience almost anything. We were told recently not to kind of implant suggestions on how many things there could be out there, but just about anything you can imagine could come up, and plenty of stuff you couldn't even imagine could come up. And they can present in all sorts of different ways. So it could be like, I don't know, you're having a really detailed conversation with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, or, your least favorite teacher from school, or, a very weird and curious sensation in your body that you've never felt before, and you're kind of obsessed by that. There's a huge variance of possible things that you can experience. And perhaps meditation, 20 minutes once a day for a few months before trying psychedelics would be a great thing, just to get you a little more familiar with your inner landscape and how things present. Because it could just be like a little shadow of a thing, or like a felt sense of somebody trying to look at you, or something looking at you, or scanning you, or, vague things that you have a suspicion, but you can't really tell for sure what they are and what's going on there. So there's so much diversity. I don't know, Kyle, do you have anything to add to that?
I guess I always like to come back something our teacher Lenny suggests with these states is that they're really amplification of experience, and thinking about the potential of any experience, as Joe's saying, like anything can really happen. And when we start to go inside, that can get amplified. So, could be things from your past, could be things from the future, could be, things that don't even really make sense. And, I've had lots of various experiences, from deep catharsis physically, a lot of shaking, a lot of screaming, a lot of crying, a lot just really letting, my emotions out in different ways, and that feels really great. I've had the other experiences that are more psychedelic, kind of transpersonal, where I'm reliving certain experiences, maybe like a birth experience, experiences of, maybe quote unquote past lives. I don't know if that's real, or what that experience was, but that's what it felt like. And then I've also had the experience of nothing, just kind of relaxation and just complete calmness, and like a deep yogic sleep. And so, the variety of experience can really vary. And it's hard to really put labels, or put like, what is going to happen in a breathwork experience, or really any holotropic state of consciousness. So I think that's why I really like to kind of come back to that amplification. It's like whatever is inside of you, all the potential of the world could get amplified. And yeah, it's in there. The collective, right? So like then you start to get into the personal, what's personal, and then what's in the collective unconscious, and we can experience all that as well. So it's unlimited.
And this is done in a group setting, and in person, and with music. And so it's really opening you up to through the breath to to what is available, and what needs to be moved or shifted or looked at.
Right.
Yes. So it might make sense to just kind of go over the 5 components, which is intensified breathing, evocative music, focused bodywork, group process, and expressive art. So as you said, this is usually done in person in a group setting. Participants will lay down on a mat with eye shades and we play music. And it's really about cultivating an inner experience. And really, when I think about psychedelics and breath work and these different techniques, that they're all vehicles. And that the breath in this setting is the vehicle to get into that state of consciousness and to explore, just like the psychedelic is the vehicle. And they can really bring us to similar places because, when it comes back to its experience, it's our experience with the universe. And these are just different modalities to get there.
I want to mention it's probably not safe to do this stuff during the pandemic. Talk to your doctor before you go to a group workshop where people are breathing heavy and sweating in a room together.
Yeah, that's a definite change for right now. And I was in a breath work workshop like a month ago, and we all had masks on, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm hyperventilating, this isn't making any sense. So yeah, that's true. So can you talk a little bit about spiritual emergence and why that's important in relation to psychedelics?
Yeah, so that was a term also developed and coined by Stanislav and Christina Grof. And it's kind of like a play on words. It really speaks to a psychospiritual crisis, so that psychospiritual emergency, but it's an opportunity to maybe emerge from that emergency into, I know Stan has used this term of like a higher level of functioning, higher level of consciousness. And so it's really looking at experiences, again, coming back to the amplification idea. When we take a psychedelic or maybe we start to do inner work, things can get amplified, and that amplification can create a crisis. And sometimes that crisis might look like things like mania, psychosis, schizophrenia. And sometimes people, when they start to have these awakening experiences, traditional Western psychiatry doesn't really know what to do with it because it can look like these, severe mental health disorders. And, somebody starts to have an awakening experience, and then they say, all of a sudden the animals are starting to talk to me, or I'm hearing, the trees speak to me. From a shamanic perspective, that might be within the range of normalcy, right? That's within their cosmology, that everything's alive, everything is animate. But from our perspective, that would dictate that you're having auditory hallucinations. And so as people are starting to become more interested in their own inner experience and coming back to, does Western psychiatry have a framework for dealing with these types of experiences? I think the spiritual emergence framework starts to provide that, bringing in a lot of Stan's background with transpersonal psychology, his background with psychedelics, and being with so many people that have had these types of awakening experiences, and really just trying to create a framework to work through it. So people don't get, say hospitalized or pathologized thinking that they're crazy or, they're going mad, that there's a deeper inner process that's starting to unfold here. And there's a quote, I don't have it up here right now, but Stan also, urges that, the complete opposite can happen. We can really romanticize these states or romanticize indigenous cultures and really rule out and say, oh, well, this is a spiritual experience, when really there might be something biologically going on with somebody, right? So we know, B12 deficiency can cause some of those symptoms. So looking at like what's organic and like, for example, organic versus functional psychosis, sometimes there is biological things that may need to get like adjusted. So really kind of looking at that. There's a great, one of my shamanic teachers told me this story of somebody going through a safari in Africa, and somebody came up to the truck and they're acting out, and somebody on the safari was like, oh, that must be the village shaman, and one of the villagers came up and said, oh no, he's just crazy. And I think that just shows that even within indigenous cultures, traditional cultures, that they had a way of thinking like, okay, when is somebody having these spiritual experiences, a shamanic crisis, versus maybe there is just something outside the range of how they can contain that. So I think that's important to emphasize as well.
Joe, did you want to add anything to that?
There's a lot of implications for this going forward. We're paying very close attention to it because as psychedelics become medicalized and more people using them, we might see a lot more of this. And is psychiatry ready? I don't think so. So we've got to really pay attention. And that's a big thing we're talking about at Psychedelics Today lately.
Say a little bit more about that. That's interesting.
So at Esalen, where breathwork was developed, holotropic breathwork was developed, there was a container for things like this, and people could hang out for 40, 80, 100 days and have lots of great supervision, and people got a lot better. And Kyle, at your facility, what was it, 60-something% of people or 70% of something people were able to go back to life without meds after that?
Yeah, and the early research around the 60s and 70s,
Yeah, it's somewhat of a curse to be on psychiatric meds the rest of your life, when perhaps you don't have to. Sometimes they're necessary. I think they're a great thing as a crutch to get you through. Some people might need it forever, but if you don't have to, it's probably a good move to not, need it all the time. Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to say.
I mean, I guess I would just, emphasize as, these substances become more popular, people want to have these experiences. I think we're going to see more people have these type of awakening experiences, and, does our culture have a framework to work with that? And I think that's going to be the bridge of like, Western psychiatry with spiritual traditions to figure out how to really serve people and really create that container for people to move through it. And we get reports from people. I mean, people just will sometimes email us and say, hey, I went to this ketamine clinic, for example, and they didn't provide like an integration framework, or it really opened me up and I don't really know what to do with it now, and I'm not getting too much support. And people are going and having these experiences outside the US, going to retreat centers, and then they come back and they don't really know how to integrate it or work with that experience. And so I just think about the scale as this becomes more popular, like, what type of systems can we create to, I guess, really catch people, right? And I think this is going to be important moving forward. And, who knows, maybe it won't happen, but I don't know. I have some speculation that, I don't know, the amount of people that reach out talking about, hey, I had this experience, now I don't know what to do with it, or wow, that was really traumatizing, I can't find any support. And I just think about my own experience. I mean, I went through this experience early on, which really got me to this field and to talk about the potential harms and dangers here. And so, you know, when I think about this topic, I'm also reflecting on my own personal experience and being like, it wasn't all glitter and rainbows. And I really had to do a lot of my own work to find those systems, those support systems to work through whatever I was going through. And without that, I mean, it would have been really, really challenging. And I always come back to something, again, one of my teachers said. I was sharing about my near-death experience and some of these early experiences that I had and the challenge of working with it. And he just looked at me and said, you know, it's a real shame, because if you grew up in a traditional culture, the elders would have stepped in to teach you this new way of seeing and being in the world. But, you know, you didn't grow up in that culture. You had to navigate it by yourself. You know, and thankfully, you know, we have the internet now, and things are a little bit more accessible, and resources are more widely available for people to understand. But, you know, I think it is going to, you know, be a concern moving forward about the framework in which we operate in.
Right, and how it's, you know, going to change us as people, as
Yeah.
humanity over time. You know, people are like, they're opening themselves up, and they're not getting sewn back up again.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
with you know, integration, and a lot of people don't understand what they're going through, and it's such a unique personal, you know, experience that you know that's hard to share, or you don't know, you know, who to talk to, and people don't know how to what to make of it, kind of classify it. So yeah, that's huge. I could see that really, you know, an important thing to be able to create those systems and be ready for that. You know, not just build the plane as we're flying it, but really anticipate that stuff and to be ready for it. And I know that, you know, you guys have had, you know, just countless conversations, and you're part of a lot, you know, we do a lot of speaking about it and teaching on it. And so, like, what are like some of the, you know, the latest things that, like, aha, you know, moments or things that have come up for you guys? And, you know, recently, is there anything that, you know, you can share that you're like, wow, I've been doing this since, you know, 2016 or whatever, and this is mind blowing right now.
I think just observation wise, like how fast things are moving. You know, I just even think about when I started on this path, you know, probably got really interested in this in like 2000. Well, I guess since my near-death experience kind of opened me up to the transpersonal world. But, you know, when I was going to school for transpersonal psychology, everybody's like, what are you doing? What is that? And then sharing my interest in psychedelics and these mystical states, everybody was like, what, there's no career in that. So, you know, just observational wise, like it's been really interesting to see how fast everything is growing, which is exciting, to see a lot of these opportunities emerge, people being more open about it, and kind of like the cultural narrative shifting, which is exciting, I think. And, you know, what type of, how, with that cultural narrative shifting, what other systems are going to start to be created? So I think there's a real potential to maybe, yeah, create new systems, change, look at things a little bit more holistically. So I get excited about that, like what type of change is on the horizon with this interest in non-ordinary states of consciousness. So.
Yeah, I think similarly. Like I'm a bit of a cynic sometimes around psychedelics, and that's kind of a problem. But you know, the overuse is a big deal, and we've got a lot of people out there using too much, and they can't think critically often anymore.
What's too much?
What's too much? Varies a lot, you know. For some people, once a year is too much. For some people, 20 times a year is okay. It depends on how, I don't know, your lifestyle is, like a lot of what's going on in your psyche. Yeah, so if your relationships and your life continues to improve, it's probably okay. If your relationship in your life seems to start disintegrating, maybe you should slow down slightly and try things that are a little less, you know, quick. Like maybe just talk therapy is okay for a couple of years while you take a break and regroup. You know, maybe 10-year break is okay. You know, it's Yeah, like that's a really big topic, and that's something we really need to flesh out for people, because it's not clear. Because when money's in the mix, people should just keep coming back. Yeah, come on down twice a month, no problem. Gladly will take your money and, you know, help you turn into an angel, or whatever the sales pitch is, you know. But in terms of positives, I really like the data on psychedelics, neurogenesis, synaptogenesis, healing brain damage, possible interventions for things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, maybe. There's just a lot of really great stuff happening. The stuff around addiction with iboga, ibogaine, and 18-MC, all very exciting to me, given our current treatments for addiction aren't great. Yeah, what else? I like a lot of the speculative stuff happening with groups like IONS. What is that? Institute of Noetic Science. They're doing some really great stuff around like spirit and the spooky, which is like kind of what I love to see and hear about. So I'm
Did you
really
say
excited about
spooky?
them. Spooky, yeah. You know, just meaning stuff that doesn't fit nice and neatly on scientific papers.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anomalous stuff, like back to transpersonal psychology. And spooky, that's like a phrase borrowed from Einstein. Spooky action at a distance, in talking about certain, you know, particle physics experiments. And yeah, like, what does it mean that, you know, 4 light years apart, a particle could flip faster than light? Like that, you know, it's pretty suggestive of something quite interesting of our reality. So, you know, that stuff, you know, philosophy is really exciting right now. We're doing a lot of work on philosophy and psychedelics with our teacher Lenny from Dream Shadow, including some stuff on ethics and the drug war. Yeah, there's just so much exciting stuff, and science has a long way to go. Like I'm excited to be part of helping science evolve.
Tell me a little bit more about what you were saying about philosophy and psychedelics. Give us a little taste of what's happening there.
Right. So philosophy has a number of different areas, right? We got like metaphysics, epistemology, what we can know, metaphysics being like beyond physics. Cosmology came out of that. Ethics, and a few other things. And there's just a lot of value there. A lot of mine left for us to, you know, a lot of gold left for us to mine. You know, what is right and wrong? You know, how should we live? You know, where did the universe come from? Is the Big Bang really it? Like, was there something maybe slightly different that happened? You know, looking at science or philosophy of mind is a big deal. What is mind? What is psyche? How do they relate? Do they overlap? Probably. You know, is the mind located in the brain? Best we can tell, the answer is no. And, you know, brain is certainly quite helpful. Receptor sites are certainly quite helpful, but they're not the whole story. You know, critiquing understandings of physics is really important. You know, we're also, culture wants us to just consume, buy, work, die, and perhaps there's a more cooperative way to do this that's not so harmful to the planet and harmful to, you know, others, people and animals, and, you know, biology in the soil. You know, we're about to have another Great American Dust Bowl if things go sideways, you know, within the next probably 5 years, given how shallow topsoil is now. So we're in for it, and it's because of our short-sighted thinking around, okay, cool, this is all I need, cool, let me go get it, without thinking about what the importance of that thing is, where it came from, and, you know, what it took to mine and process it and ship it and all this other stuff. Like, there's a lot that's not calculated for. So like this idea of total cost of ownership that's used in business quite regularly is a really important concept for the rest of the world. Like, what is the total cost of, you know, running a McDonald's, for instance? Like, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. You might not be paying for it, but the rest of the world does. And with all that money you made from owning that, you know, fast food restaurant, what did you do? Did you just do more extraction? You know, there's a lot, and psychedelics can help us understand this stuff a little bit better and feel it for real. Yeah, but psychedelics can also put us in a really interesting quagmire of like, I don't even know what to do. I'm paralyzed by how much there is to do out there, and how many problems there are to work on, how many amazing things there are out there too, right? Just, you know, plenty of amazing things.
So how can psychedelics help us get to, you know, answering some of these big, you know, philosophical and environmental questions?
Right. It's helpful to have a community. If we don't have a community, we can go really far off the rails, and, you know, not necessarily be a net benefit to our culture. You know, which is sad to say, but it's true. Like, it can kind of cripple you from being helpful for a while. So being in community helps buffer that, because it, you know, you're no longer God, everybody else also is. That kind of deal is really important. And checking your kind of ego inflation, and, you know, just having regular conversations keeps things moving. So that's really important. And, you know, like, I think starting close to home is really important too. Like, what's going on in your world that you can really fix, or, you know, improve, you know, what's happening in your body, in your home, in your town, you know, with your friends. You know, it's a lot easier to impact your friends than it is like national policy. While you should also probably be paying attention to that, perhaps you might want to pay more attention to your friends and family.
Start hyper local.
Right.
Yeah, and I like that term net benefit that you threw out there, because I've been feeling like, you know, I want to make sure my self check is, am I giving more than I'm receiving in this world? You know, and so that I haven't heard it, you know, that you used in that way, and I liked that little nugget there. So like with all of this, you know, understanding about, you know, through the use of psychedelics, about the nature of being and the future and all this, like what would your definition now be of what is consciousness?
Wow, you asked us
Big
at an
questions, I
amazing
know.
point in time.
I know I threw that one in there, but
Yeah. So for us, we're like deep in this philosophy rabbit hole right now and working on that. And William James, a really important psychologist, fundamental psychologist, if you really want to understand phenomena like this, suggests it kind of barely exists as a thing.
It's more of a function.
Yeah, it's more of a function than a thing. So it certainly has some sort of existence, but it's not necessarily like, well, a big problem is language. Like, we don't even know what we're saying when we say consciousness. And we one of us might, but it doesn't mean we all agree. This is kind of like Voltaire's kind of like shared definition situation. Like, we have to have a shared definition before we can really have a meaningful conversation, right? So like, yeah, like we can have experiences, and from our kind of philosophical kind of framework, that's a substantially more real than this idea of consciousness, or like what does Lenny say, or Whitehead say, actual experience is actual, actualized, and it's very real, and it builds on everything from the past. Every new experience like inherits the whole past. So yeah, like I don't know, Kyle, how do you deal with the word consciousness now? It's like troubling to me that I don't have a great
Well,
answer.
yeah, it's confusing. And you know, we just did an episode with Dr. Matthew Johnson from Johns Hopkins, and the title is "What is Consciousness?" He put out this paper exploring this problem, is that we toss around consciousness, and it means so many different things to so many different people. And yeah, I think, as Joe said, the hard thing is just finding a shared definition, right? Like, does consciousness just mean sentience? right? It's like, oh, this thing is just alive, and you know, or does it mean that it has this higher level of functioning where it's able to think and be aware of its own experience? Or is consciousness tied with soul, right? So when I think about like my near-death experience, I talk about consciousness was expanding. There is part of me that felt like that was soul or spirit as well. And so it's really hard to yeah, put a label around this stuff. And I think maybe we need to get better about what we're really talking about. But, you know, I think that's the importance of having experience, is so that we can kind of go in and understand, like, what is this experience and how can I put some language to it to better understand it? Yeah, so it's one, I get, you know, it's the hard problem of consciousness. What is it? And how do we measure it? What, you know,
That's why it's always emerging.
It's always emerging, yeah.
I like that.
Right, right. Well, this feels like a good place to bring it home. And would you like, I'd like to invite you guys to tell people if they, you know, if they want to find you or take your classes, a little bit more about how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, we're at psychedelicstoday.com. We're all over social media. We've got a school platform, Psychedelic Education Center, with all sorts of offerings, some that include CEs for some mental health professions and healthcare professionals. More coming all the time. I'm working on maybe 4 projects right now, including one around psychedelics and clergy and psychedelics and religious freedom in the US. We've got a couple books for sale on Amazon and digital copies from our store. And miss anything, Kyle?
I think that's it. You're good.
Yeah.
Nice job.
You have a cool free gift too, I think, that we'll post at the on the page. So
Absolutely.
you can take advantage of that too.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing notes? Any last thoughts?
Stay safe out there. If you're gonna jump in, study, buy a test kit. There's a lot of great stuff at Dance Safe, a great nonprofit, and there's plenty of others too. So yeah, explore safely.
Yeah. I'll double on that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tami, for having us.
Yeah,
It's
thank
been
you, Tami.
fun.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was great to see you, and I look forward to future collaborations and hearing what's next with you guys. So thanks.
Looking forward. Take care, Tami.
Bye.